A guy is playing golf with his wife. They're on the 12th hole and the guy slices his tee shot right into the woods. He trudges into the woods and locates his ball. It's in a little clearing, but there is a big barn between him and the green. He takes a good look and says, "Listen, honey, I think if you hold the barn door open, I can hit the ball right through the barn and onto the green." So his wife goes over and holds the door open. The guy takes a 4-iron and whack, hits the ball. The ball hits his wife right between the eyes, killing her instantly. Well, it's a year later, and the guy is on the same golf course with his new wife. They're on the 12th hole, and once again, he hits a slice into the woods. Shaking his head with disgust, he heads into the woods. Sure enough, his ball is in about the same spot. Sadly, he takes out a 7-iron and lines up to hit the ball sideways back onto the fairway. Before he can take the shot, his new wife says, "Honey, I think I might be able to hold the barn door open for you. That way you can hit the ball through the barn and onto the green." The guy just shakes his head. "No way, dear," he says. "I tried that last year and ended up with a 9 on the hole." A doctor, a priest, and an engineer go golfing. After only a few rounds, they get caught behind the worst group of golfers they've ever seen. After growing impatient from waiting for them to finish their holes, they go into the clubhouse to complain. "Let me explain," says the manager. "You see, those men all used to be firefighters, some of the best our city has ever seen. There was a fire here at the clubhouse about 5 years ago. Those heroic men saved our clubhouse from the fire. However, most unfortunately, they all lost their sight in the terrible fire. Since then, they are welcome to use our facilities for life. It's the very least we could do." The priest looks forlorn and says, "I'm so sorry to hear it. I will hold a prayer service this Sunday dedicated to these men." The doctor says, "What an awful thing. I know a highly regarded optometrist who has done some research that might be able to help them. I'll arrange for them to meet as soon as I can." The engineer thinks for a moment and says, "Why can't they golf at night?" Two priests were playing golf. Father Bob hit his ball into the woods on his first swing. "Damn it, that totally missed," he cursed. "You shouldn't curse Father Bob," said Father Michael, "or God might punish you." Father Bob apologized, and they went on playing. On his next swing, Father Bob hit his ball into the sand pit. "Oh, damn it, that totally missed," he cursed again. Again, Father Michael warned, "Do not utter such words, Father Bob, lest God punishes you for it." Father Bob apologized again, and they continued playing. On his third swing, Father Bob hit his ball into the pond. "Damn it, that totally missed," cursed Father Bob once again. Before Father Michael could say anything, an ominous dark cloud suddenly gathered out of the blue sky, and vicious lightning came down and struck Father Michael, killing him instantly. Father Bob was completely stunned. Before he could understand what was happening in front of him, he heard a thunderous, deep voice coming from the sky. "Damn it, that totally missed." 4 guys have been going to the same golfing trip to St. Andrews for many years. 2 days before the group is to leave, Jack's wife puts her foot down and tells him he isn't going and that she's got something else planned. Naturally, Jack's mates are very upset that he can't go, but what can they do? 2 days later, the 3 get to St. Andrews only to find Jack sitting at the bar with 4 drinks set up. "Wow, Jack, how long have you been here, and how did you talk your missus into letting you go?" they say with astonishment. "Well, actually, I've been here since last night. You see, yesterday evening, I was sitting in my living room chair, and my wife came up behind me and put her hands over my eyes and asked, 'Guess who?' I pulled her hands off, and there she was, wearing only a see-through nightie. She took my hand and pulled me into our bedroom. On her bedside table, I saw the book, 50 Shades of Grey. She had lit candles and sprinkled rose petals around, and on the bed, she had handcuffs and ropes. Then she slipped off her nightie, lay on the bed, and said, 'Okay, tie me up, handcuff me to the bed, and do whatever you want.' So here I am." A man goes to confessional and tells the priest, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I took the Lord's name in vain while golfing." "I understand, my son," the priest says. "I play the game as well, and it can be frustrating. What happened?" "Well," the man says, I hit my drive on the 15th green and it sliced to the right, into the trees. Was that when you did it? The priest asked. No, the ball bounced off a tree and onto the green, the man continued, but it bounced into a sand trap. And then you cursed? No, I pulled out a wedge and chipped the ball right out of there. It rolled down the green and stopped 2 feet from the cup. Ah, that was when you blasphemed. The priest nods. No, Father, the man replies. Jesus Christ, the priest yells, you missed a 2-foot putt? A young man met a beautiful girl and agreed to spend the night with her for $500. So they did. Before he left, he told her that he did not have any cash with him, but that he would have his secretary write a check and mail it to her, calling the payment rent for apartment. On the way to his office, he regretted it and decided it wasn't worth the price. So he had his secretary send a check for $250 and enclosed the following note. Dear Madam, enclosed find check in the amount of $250 for rent of your apartment. I am not sending the amount agreed upon because when I rented the apartment, I was under the impression that it had never been occupied, that there was plenty of heat, that it was small enough to make me cozy and feel at home. Last night, however, I found it had been previously occupied, that there was no heat, and it was entirely too large. Upon receipt of the note, the girl immediately returned the check for $250 with the following note. Dear Sir, first of all, I cannot understand how you expect a beautiful apartment to remain unoccupied indefinitely. As for the heat, there is heat if you know how to turn it on. Regarding the space, the apartment is indeed of regular size, but if you don't have enough furniture to fill it, please don't blame the landlady. Please be so kind as to send a check for the full amount of $500, or I'll be forced to contact your current landlady. For several years, a man was having an affair with an Italian woman. One night, she confided in him that she was pregnant. Not wanting to ruin his reputation or his marriage, he paid her a large sum of money if she would go to Italy to secretly have the child. If she stayed in Italy to raise the child, he would also provide child support until the child turned 18. She agreed, but asked how he would know when the baby was born. To keep it discreet, he told her to simply mail him a postcard and write spaghetti on the back. He would then arrange for the child support payments to begin. One day, about 9 months later, he came home to his confused wife. Honey, she said, you received a very strange postcard today. Oh, really? Let me see, he said. The wife gave it to him and watched as her husband read the card, turned white, and fainted. On the card was written, spaghetti, 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 2 with meatballs, 1 without, send extra sauce. A man walks into a bar and says to the bartender, beer for me, beer for you, and beer for everyone who is in the bar now. After drinking, the man starts walking out of the bar. Hey, what about the payment? Yells the bartender. I have no money, answers the man. The bartender hears that and beats the man as hard as he can, then throws him out into the street. The next evening, the man walks again into the bar and says to the bartender, beer for me, beer for you, and beer for everyone who is in the bar now. The bartender thinks to himself, the man can't be stupid enough to pull the same trick twice. Tonight he must have enough money, and gives beer to everyone. After drinking, the man starts walking out of the bar. Hey, what about the payment? Yells the bartender. I have no money, answers the man. The bartender hears that and beats the man as hard as he can, then throws him out into the street. One evening later, the man walks again into the bar and says to the bartender, beer for me, and beer for everyone who is now in the bar. In disgust, the bartender asks, what, no beer for me this time? No, answers the man. You get violent when you drink. Reaching the end of a job interview, the human resources officer asked a young engineer fresh out of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and what starting salary are you looking for? The engineer replies, in the region of $125,000 a year, depending on the benefits package. The interviewer inquires, well, what would you say to a package of 5 weeks vacation, 14 paid holidays, full medical and dental, a company matching retirement fund to 50% of salary, and a company car leased every 2 years? Say, a red Corvette? The engineer sits up straight and says, wow, are you kidding? The interviewer replies, "Yeah, but you started it." Started my first job 2 months ago. A low-paying job, but with good potential for growth. I'm yet to pay my student loan during the job interview. My boss said I spend too much time thinking before I answer the questions, so they have doubts about my sincerity. Nevertheless, he said he saw my potential and picked me. The board was going to meet today to discuss an impending merger. My boss asked me to come to get my feet wet on making big decisions about the company. I can't help but feel a promotion and a salary increase would really help right now. He offered to give me a ride home after the meeting so we can talk about what went on. I remembered our first interview and that I lingered before I answered any of his questions. So when he asked me what my takeaway from the meeting was, I answered straight away. "The roast beef, sir." In an African tribe village, the chieftain's wife gave birth to a white-skinned child. The chieftain quickly figured the voluntary doctor from Europe might be to blame, so the chieftain asked him to talk in his tent. Chieftain: "Today my wife gave birth to a white child. She and I are dark-skinned. You are white. It doesn't take a doctor to figure out that you have slept with my wife?" The doctor remains calm. The answer lies in the genetics. Some genetics have recessive traits which are not apparent to the parents but may be passed on to the child. For example, last week one of your sheep gave birth to a black sheep. The chieftain pauses for a moment, then replies, "I tell you what, you say no word about black sheep and I say no word about white child." A Russian village has a tradition where each year they hold a very unusual contest that consists of 4 challenges. First, the contestants must down a bottle of vodka. Then they must swim across an icy lake. Third, they must shake hands with a chained-up wild bear on the other side. And finally, they have to run to the closest village and make love to the most beautiful girl there. The first contestant, 19-year-old Yuri, slowly manages to drink the bottle of vodka, jumps into the icy waters, and dies shortly after due to hypothermia. The second contestant, Vlad, the local huntsman, downs the vodka, just about manages to swim across the lake. But as he tries to shake hands with the wild animal, it catches him and tears him to pieces. The third contestant, Igor, a broad-shouldered ex-Spetsnaz tower of a man, downs the bottle of vodka, then asks for another bottle to boast. He drinks that as well, swims across the lake in a minute, goes up to the bear, breaks its shackles, and starts wrestling with it. During the scuffle, they stumble into the forest and out of sight. In about 20 minutes, Igor walks out of the woods all torn up, his clothes ripped to shreds. He shouts across the lake to the onlookers, "Now where's that girl I'm supposed to shake hands with?" A young man went to his father one day to tell him that he wanted to get married. His father was happy for him. He asked his son who the girl was, and he told him that it was Samantha, a girl from the neighborhood. With a sad face, the old man said to his son, "I'm sorry to say this, son, but I have to tell you that the girl you want to marry is your sister, but please don't tell your mother about this." The young man again brought 3 more names to his father, but ended up frustrated, causing the same response from the dad. So he decides to tell his mother, "Mama, I want to get married, but all the girls that I love, Dad said they are my sisters and I mustn't tell you." His mother smiled and said to him, "Don't worry, my son. You can marry any of those girls, because you're not his son." A family of 4 decides city life doesn't suit their style anymore, so they sell their house in the suburbs and buy a dairy cow ranch. After a week or so, the dad and 2 sons are out mending the fences when their neighbor comes driving up the road and stops to introduce himself. "How are y'all doing? The name's Al. Friends call me Big Al. Are you folks new to the trials and tribulations of ranching?" The father said yes, and the pleasantries continued until Big Al asked if the family ranch had a name. "Well," said the father, "I wanted to name it the Flying Q." The wife suggested the Lazy A. My older son Gary was partial to the Bar J, and the younger one Steve liked the Pistol T. So we had a family compromise and named the ranch the Flying Q Lazy, a Bar J Pistol T family ranch. "That's quite a mouthful," says Big Al. "But where's all your cattle?" "Well," said the father, "so far none have survived the branding." Once upon a time in a village, a man appeared and announced to the villagers that he would buy monkeys for $10 each. The villagers, seeing that there were many monkeys around, went out to the forest and started catching them. The man bought thousands at $10, and as the supply started to diminish, the villagers stopped their effort. He further announced that he would now buy at $20. This renewed the efforts of the villagers, and they started catching monkeys again. Soon the supply diminished even further, and people started going back to their farms. The offer increased to $25 each, and the supply of monkeys became so little that it was an effort to even see a monkey, let alone catch it. The man now announced that he would buy monkeys at $50. However, since he had to go to the city on some business, his assistant would now buy on behalf of him. In the absence of the man, the assistant told the villagers, "Look at all these monkeys in the big cage that the man has collected. I will sell them to you at $35, and when the man returns from the city, you can sell them to him for $50 each." The villagers rounded up all their savings and bought all the monkeys. They never saw the man nor his assistant, only monkeys everywhere. Now you have a better understanding of how the cryptocurrency market works. A backpacker finds a tiny village tucked away in the mountains with one tiny pub. He walks into the pub and there are all these old men just sitting around in silence. So the backpacker orders a beer and finds himself a seat. Suddenly one of the men shouts, "Number 4!" And the whole room erupts with laughter. The backpacker is surprised by this, but then the laughter dies down and he goes back to sipping his pint. Then another one of them shouts, "Number 21!" And once again, everybody has a good laugh. The backpacker turns to someone and asks what's going on. "Ah, you see, we're a bit isolated out here," the man says. "We all know each other's jokes so well we decided to give them all a number to save time when we want to tell them." The backpacker gets a mischievous look on his face. He stands up and shouts, "Number 1001!" It was like an earthquake had hit. The whole room reverberated with the men's voices, some of them slapping their thighs and almost falling off their chairs. As the laughter died down, some of them were pressing their hands to their chests, just to make sure they weren't having a heart attack. The backpacker turns to the man next to him and says, "So is that one of the good ones?" The man says, "Oh no, it's just that we'd never heard that one before." A family took their frail, elderly mother to a nursing home and left her, hoping she would be well cared for. The next morning, the nurses bathed her, fed her a tasty breakfast, and set her in a chair at a window overlooking a lovely flower garden. She seemed okay, but after a while she slowly started to tilt sideways in her chair. 2 attentive nurses immediately rushed up to catch her and straighten her up. Again, she seemed okay, but after a while she slowly started to tilt over to her other side. The nurses rushed back and once more brought her back upright. This went on all morning and repeated again the following day. On the second afternoon, the family arrived to see how the old woman was adjusting to her new home. "So, Ma, how is it here? Are they treating you all right?" "It's pretty nice," she replied, "except they won't let me fart." A man is sitting in his sports car at the traffic lights when a little girl on a bike asks him if he wants to race. "Sure." The man laughs. The light turns green and he floors the pedal. The car takes off like a shot and he leaves the little girl in the dust. A few seconds later, though, he sees something gaining on him in his mirror fast. He just barely catches a glimpse of the little girl on her bike as she shoots past him. "She must be going 80 miles per hour. He shouts and shifts into a higher gear, pushing the car even faster. He quickly blasts past her as if she were standing still, but again, just a few seconds later, she shoots past him, now doing over 100 miles an hour on her little bike. Going so fast, sparks and smoke are streaming from her training wheels. After another few seconds, he comes to a curve where he sees the little girl crashed in a heap on the side of the road. He pulls over and jumps out to see if she's okay. Miraculously, she's survived. So he asks, "Why did you go so fast?" Just as she falls unconscious, the little girl replies, "My streamers got caught on your mirror." A local charity realized that it had never received a donation from the town's most successful lawyer. The volunteer in charge of contributions called him to persuade him to contribute. "Our research shows that out of a yearly income of more than $600,000 you give not a penny to charity. Wouldn't you like to give back to the community in some way?" The lawyer thought about it for a minute and replied, "First, did your research also show that my mother is dying after a long illness and has medical bills that are several times her annual income?" Embarrassed, the volunteer mumbled, No. Second, that my brother, a disabled veteran, is blind and confined to a wheelchair." The stricken volunteer began to stammer out an apology, but was cut off. "Third, that my sister's husband died in a horrific traffic accident." The lawyer's voice rose in indignation, "leaving her penniless with 3 children." The humiliated volunteer, completely beaten, said simply, "I had no idea." On a roll, the lawyer cut him off once again. "And I don't give them any goddamn money, so why should I give any to you?" A blonde husband and his blonde wife were traveling together on a long train journey. They were excited about their trip and settled into their seats. As the journey progressed, the wife suddenly looked alarmed and turned to her husband. "Honey, I need to tell you something," she said. "The guy sitting beside me just reached over and put his hand in my pants." The husband, who had been reading a newspaper, looked up with a calm expression. "Oh no, really?" he asked. "What happened next?" The wife, still visibly shaken, replied, "I'm not sure. I was so stunned that I didn't know how to react. I thought maybe you could help me figure out what to do." The husband, staying calm, replied with a grin, "Don't worry, sweetheart, don't worry. The money is in my pants pocket." A man wakes up hungover, with no memory of coming home. He realizes he's fully clothed in bed. He sees one of the lamps on a bedside table is broken, and he smells like he was sick on himself. He sits up and sees muddy tracks leading to his bed. The man groans and holds his head, knowing he's going to be in big trouble with his wife. She then enters the bedroom with a glass of water and some aspirin. "Here, sweetie, you probably need this," she says, handing it to him. "Sounds like you had a fun night. When you feel like it, I have your favorite breakfast in the kitchen. You can lay back down and I'll bring it to you in bed. I had my mom pick up the kids so you can have some peace and quiet, and after you clean up and feel better, I was thinking we could fool around, and I'll do that thing for you that you like." The man is baffled that she is being so nice to him. Suspicious, he asks what happened last night. "Around 2 a.m., I was woken up by you trying to unlock the door. I let you in, and you staggered right past me and collapsed in the bed after knocking over the lamp," she says. "I was mad, but I figured I should try to undress you. Then you yelled at me. I'm so sorry, honey. What did I say? Get your hands off of me, lady. I'm married." A cop pulls over an old lady for speeding on a highway. He asks for her driver's license and registration. When she opens her wallet, he notices a concealed carry permit. He asks, "Ma'am, do you have a weapon in your possession at this time?" She responds, "I'll bet you $100 you can't guess the answer to that question," as she slaps a crisp bill on her dashboard. The cop rubs his chin and thinks for a moment and then says, "Okay, lady, I'll take that bet." He guesses that she has a .38 special in her purse and a .45 in her glove box, and a 9mm Glock in the center console, and a shotgun in the trunk. "However did you guess that, young man?" the old lady says, grasping her pearls. "You see, ma'am," the cop said, snatching up the $100 bill. "This is Reddit. After I read about you on the 3rd repost, I knew I'd find you soon enough." As a butcher is shooing away a dog from his shop, he sees a $25 bill and a note in his mouth that reads, "10 pork chops, please." Amazed, he takes the money, puts a bag of 10 pork chops in the dog's mouth, and quickly closes the shop. He follows the dog and watches him wait for a green light, look both ways, and trot across the road to a bus stop. The dog checks the bus schedule and sits on the bench when a bus arrives, then boards the bus. The butcher follows, dumbstruck. After a while, the dog stands on his back legs to pull the yellow stop cable. The butcher follows him off the bus. The dog runs up to a house and drops his bag on the step. He goes back down the path, takes a big run, and throws himself whap against the door. He does this again and again, no answer. So he jumps on a wall, walks around the garden, beats his head against a window, jumps off, and waits at the front door. A big guy opens it and starts cursing and shouting at the dog. The butcher runs up and screams at the guy, "What the hell are you doing? This dog is a genius." The owner responds, "Genius, my ass. It's the second time this week he's forgotten his keys. Old lady gets into a Mercedes-Benz taxicab. As she hops in, the driver asks her where she's going. She gives him an address as she's just arrived in town to visit family. They keep going for a bit when the old lady notices the very characteristic Mercedes-Benz ornament emblem mounted on the hood. "So what is that thing for?" she asks the driver. The driver sees this as a chance to prank the old woman for some laughs. "That's a sight that I had installed so I can aim my targets better," he answers. "What do you mean by targets?" she asks. "Well, do you see that cyclist over there cycling along the road? Well, I hate those cyclists, so I'm going to run over him." As the woman gasps, he proceeds to accelerate and drive directly towards the unaware cyclist. But in the last moment, he turns the wheel to dodge the cyclist. But there's a loud sound that surprises the driver. "What was that sound?" he asks. "Well, you can say whatever you want about that fancy sight of yours, but if I hadn't opened the car's door, we wouldn't have hit that goddamn cyclist." A nun gets into a cab. She notices the cab driver staring at her, and she asks, "Why are you staring?" The cab driver replies, "I have a question, but I don't want to offend you." The nun responds, "My son, you cannot offend me. I've been a nun for so long that I've seen and heard everything. I'm sure there's nothing you could say or ask that I would find offensive." The cab driver says, "Well, I've always had a fantasy to kiss a nun." The nun replies, "Well, let's see what we can do about that. But on two conditions. You must be single and Catholic." The driver says, "Yes, I'm single and I'm Catholic." The nun says, "Okay, pull into the next alley." The nun then gives the cab driver a kiss that would make a hooker blush. When they get back on the road, the man starts crying. The nun says, "My dear child, why are you crying?" The cab driver replies, "Forgive me, but I lied. I'm married and I'm Jewish." The nun says, "That's okay, my name's Steve and I'm going for a Halloween party." A man lands in a new city and catches a cab to the hotel. As they approach a red light, the cab driver keeps going, not stopping. Man asks what's going on. Cab driver responds, "Oh, don't worry. My brother always runs through red lights." They keep going, and the cab driver doesn't even slow down for a stop sign. Man yells, "What's the deal?" clearly furious. Cab driver calms him down and reminds him, "My brother never stops at stop signs. Relax." Up ahead, the next light turns green. Cab driver slams on the brakes, bringing the car to a screeching halt. Man is furious and confused. Before he can say anything, the cab driver says, "Have to be careful. My brother might be driving today." A foreigner enters a country and gets a taxi. On his way to the hotel, he points at a tall building and asks the driver, "How long did it take to build that building?" The driver responds, 2 years. 2 years! In my country, it would have taken only 2 months, the foreigner said. After a while, the foreigner again asked, "How long did it take to build that building?" Pointing at a taller building. The driver responds, 3 years. 3 years! In my country, it would have taken only 1 year, the foreigner said. Some more time passes. The foreigner again asks, "How long did it take to build that building?" Pointing at the tallest building. The driver, feeling his country's reputation on the line, said, 1 month. The foreigner, not to be outdone, said 1 month. In my country, it would have taken only 15 days. A few minutes later, they pass by the country's tallest and most famous building. The foreigner naturally asks, "How long did it take to build that building?" The driver sighs and says, "How do I tell you this?" The foreigner looks confused and asks, "Tell me what?" The driver says, "On my way to the airport this morning, there was no building there." A man driving a Kia stops at a traffic light next to a Rolls-Royce. The Kia driver rolls down his window and calls out to the Rolls-Royce driver, "Hey, pal, that's an impressive car. Does your Rolls have Wi-Fi? My Kia does." The Rolls-Royce driver replies, "Yes, it has Wi-Fi." The Kia driver continues, "Nice. And do you have a fridge in there?" "I have a fridge in the back seat of my Kia." The Rolls-Royce driver, getting irritated, responds, "Yes, there's a refrigerator." Not backing down, the Kia driver asks, "That's cool, man. What about a TV? I've got a TV in my Kia's back seat." The Rolls-Royce driver, increasingly annoyed, says, "Yes, there's a television. A Rolls-Royce is the epitome of luxury vehicles." The Kia driver says, "Amazing car, but do you have a bed in there? I've got a bed in the back of my Kia." Frustrated that his car lacks a bed, the Rolls-Royce driver speeds off. He heads straight to the dealership and orders a bed to be installed in his Rolls. The following morning, he picks up his car, and the bed looks fantastic, complete with silk sheets and elegant brass accents. It's undoubtedly a bed suited for a Rolls-Royce. The Rolls-Royce driver spends the entire day searching for the Kia. Finally, late that night, he spots the Kia, parked with fogged-up windows. He gets out of his Rolls-Royce and knocks on the Kia's window. At first, there's no response, but then the owner pokes his head out, dripping wet. "I now have a bed in the back of my Rolls-Royce," the Rolls-Royce driver declares smugly. The Kia driver replies, "Did you really drag me out of the shower just to tell me that?"